My name is Daniela Waldvogel and I am the CEO of the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also the president of Swedish Chambers International, SCI. And SCI, as many of you know, brings together over 30 Swedish chambers of commerce in the world. Welcome to this launch of Global Business Climate Survey, as well our 6th launch in a row. It's a true pleasure to welcome all of you, ambassadors, partners, business representatives, ministers, all united by a shared commitment to global trade and to international collaboration. We meet, and I don't need to tell you this, but we meet in a time of global turbulence across the world and in the global economy. And the headlines are, of course, all familiar now. Geopolitical tensions, disrupted supply chains, rising protectionism, and intensifying climate risks. And the full implications for global businesses are still unfolding, of course, because there is still much we don't know about how companies will adapt to this new reality. And that is actually the gap that we have tried to close with this survey that we will dig in and dive into deeper today. This report is the result of close collaboration within Team Sweden, Business Sweden, Swedish embassies, Swedish chambers across the world in the SCI networks have collected data, compiled data, and analyzed data. Sincere thank you to all of you that have contributed, whether it's through interviews, through research, or on-the-ground work. As the CEO of the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce and the president of the SCI network, I want to underline something else, and something that might be quite obvious to many of you, but it's worth repeating. Swedish companies in the world don't just push exports, goods, and services. We push values. We push values such as sustainability, transparency, innovation. And in today's world, Sweden's role as a responsible and reliable business partner is actually more vital than ever. So, as we dive into the findings of this report today, I encourage you to look beyond the numbers, reflect on the agility and the resilience of Swedish companies. Navigating today's world and today's trade landscape is far from easy, but Swedish businesses are adapting and they're responding with strength. Having read this report during the last couple of weeks, I feel actually quite hopeful, and I trust you will feel the same way too. And with that, I would like to hand over to the Minister for International Development, Cooperation and Foreign Trade, Benjamin Dousa. Give him a warm hand of applause.
Thank you, and dear friends around the globe. I'm delighted to attend this presentation of the 6th Global Business Climate Survey, and my deep appreciation to Swedish companies worldwide for contributing to the Global Business Climate Survey and to the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce for hosting today's event. Thanks also to members of Team Sweden for being here and for close and fruitful collaboration. To strengthen this collaboration, we will launch today our brand new Team Sweden website. This year's Global Business Climate Survey is the biggest ever in scope, reflecting an expanded number of markets reaching 37. This survey is an essential document for companies doing business and investing globally. We live in turbulent times, as said here before. Almost every day, we wake up to the news of additional trade tariffs, new levels of conflict, signs of the effects of climate change. Global trade is being reshaped by geopolitical competition and protectionism. It is more important than ever to improve competitiveness of Sweden and of the EU, increase our productivity and diversify our trade. For the EU to stay competitive, we must revitalize the internal market with its 450 million consumers and 23 million businesses. Let's unlock its full potential by implementing the internal market strategy, reduce barriers, simplify and deregulate EU legislation, increase cross-border trade in services, and of course create an integrated capital market. The service sector in particular is an untapped potential, not least in light of the twin transition. The administrative burden is still one of the main obstacles for cross-border trade, as well as the number of regulated professions. Sweden will continue to push for a more integrated service market with more harmonization between member states. One area of improvement is the use of the notification procedure. The US is a key partner for Sweden and for the European Union. The US is our third largest export market, and Sweden is the 11th largest investor in the US market. The recent decisions by the US to raise tariffs on steel and aluminum is unfortunate. The EU stands ready to engage in discussions with the US to find solutions that benefit both sides. We want more trade and cooperation with the US, not more barriers. At the same time, we must be prepared to implement countermeasures if necessary. As for our relationship with China, another important trade partner for Sweden and for the EU, it must be managed on its own merits and not as a consequence of US actions. Sweden is not in the business of closing our markets and relying on protectionism or state aid. Instead, you can count on us to push for more free trade agreements from Latin America to Southeast Asia. We are the most free trade friendly country on earth. From the Global Business Climate Survey, we learned that Swedish companies remain cautiously optimistic in their outlook for exporting and investing abroad, in spite of current challenges. This is reassuring. We must not forget the positive impact that Swedish companies have, thanks to their spirit of innovation, sustainable business practices, and climate-smart solutions. We spend the largest amount of GDP on R&D in the European Union. We have well-functioning financial markets. We have the most publicly listed companies within the European Union. Swedish companies appreciate brand Sweden and see it as an essential for their success. The purpose of our brand new strategy, A Space to Grow, is to further improve the image of Sweden abroad and to support business efforts. The new brand strategy is part of a more consolidated approach in promoting Swedish businesses abroad. Different organizations need to work in partnership as one team, Team Sweden. We need to sharpen all our tools to stay competitive and increase Swedish exports. For the past 10 years, one of the keys to our success has been collaboration within Team Sweden. When drafting our updated strategy for trade, investment, and global competitiveness, in close dialogue with the private sector, chambers of commerce, and academia, my government decided to review and clarify this collaboration. The purpose was to make it more business-oriented and also make it easier to get in touch with relevant Team Sweden actors. I want to thank Elin Bjur and Helen Rönnholm of Business Sweden. I know they're here somewhere. Yeah, over there. Thank you for excellent cooperation. And it is now my great pleasure to present the result of this cooperation and officially launch the new website, teamsweden.se. Behind me here, you can see some of the constellations, and what's new is that we have invited all Swedish regions to present themselves on the website. Not yet on the website are all the new Team Sweden constellations abroad that operate under the leadership of our embassies and consulates abroad. Another important tool for effective business promotion is a good and strategic use of outgoing business delegations, as well as incoming visits to Stockholm and to Sweden. Here, Business Sweden and my colleagues at the Minister have elaborated a new planning process, putting business potential at the very core. We will strive to give you a more long-term planning capability by including trips or events as far as 2 years ahead. As you can see behind me here, there's also a calendar with upcoming events attached to the Team Sweden website. I hope you all find this new site useful when doing business. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Dusä, for your interesting remarks. We have a tough schedule today, so now I would like to introduce our next speaker and welcome up on stage Jan Larsson, CEO of Business Sweden. Warm welcome.
Thank you very much. It's certainly not easy to come after Daniela and Benjamin, and also being introduced, but we have a tough schedule. I will speak very fast, so I hope that you will listen very fast as well. First of all, also from us at Business Sweden, a warm welcome to this presentation. Both all of you here in Stockholm, it's great to see such a crowded room, but also to everyone following us online. As has been said, this is the 6th edition of the Global Business Climate Survey, and it's more than twice as big as we've ever done them before, because we feel that they really fill, as Daniela was saying, really fill a gap of knowledge and understanding. And that is particularly important in times like now, when most Swedish companies struggle with trying to understand what is happening across the globe, trying to understand what is happening with the authoritarian tendencies that we see across the world, what is happening with the new alliances that we see, the BRICS Plus, the Global South, the multipolar world rhetorics, what is happening with the conflicts, not only in Ukraine, but also in the Middle East, and actually also nowadays between India and Pakistan, and how will that impact supply chains, how will that impact our business. So there are a lot of reasons for Swedish companies to be cautious. But at the same time, sitting still and waiting is really not an option. Because at the same time as the visibility decreases and is super short right now, we basically don't know after a meeting if we need to check our news on the cell phones to see if there is a new tariff somewhere, a new conflict somewhere, a new threat of a nuclear attack somewhere across the globe, which is really a totally brand new situation also for companies. But sitting still and waiting is not an option, because at the same time as this is happening, the tech development is more fast than it probably has ever been. AI, automation, autonomy, all of those things, but also the pace in developing new products, and at the same time in design phase, also connecting production capacity into the development of the new programs, making the development of new products that are not only better but also cheaper than last year's products go so much faster than ever, which is really also reshaping the way we need to think production, the way we need to think industry. And naturally, this is accompanied by rapid development in demography, where the markets that we used to know as our home markets are shrinking in population, whereas new markets such as India, such as Southeast Asia, is growing rapidly, also affecting where future demand will be, also affecting the footprints of Swedish companies. And naturally, on top of everything, the biggest threat to mankind is still climate change. And with climate change comes also the technological advanced Swedish industry that has a good position in also growing the demand going forward. So the Global Business Climate Survey now, reaching out to 37 different countries, asking the Swedish companies in all these countries how they look at the business climate, how they look at their future investments, how they look at their profitability in the different markets where they are. Basically, that is following for Business Sweden an old tradition. We have been around since 1887, when a bunch of the Swedish industrial companies decided that Sweden is too small for them, so they better collaborate. And if they want to go abroad and find new markets, they have to work together. And this is really a practical way between us naturally and the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce and the embassies around the globe to kind of carry on that tradition. Swedish companies opening up, explaining how they look at the markets, and sharing that information to other Swedish companies that can hook on. So what are the results? Well, I will not steal everything from the presentations going forward, but given the very dramatic situation in the world, I think they're very promising, as Minister Dosa said. 70% of the companies we spoke to rate the business climate as positive in the countries where they work. So despite all of these challenges, they still look positive to where they are. The fastest growing are still, or the best areas when it comes to business climates are still the 3 countries that were on top last year and the year before that. And that is the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and India coming out as the winners. And why is that? Well, I think there are a few explanations to that. One is that all of these regions are showing a steady growth path going forward. There is a lot of investments into infrastructure, a lot of investments into climate smart technology, a lot of investments in transforming societies. And when there is transformation, then we know that Swedish industrial companies are really advanced and successful. Profitability for Swedish companies out there is stable. Companies still make a profit from being abroad, which is important to underline, because naturally you could get, with that short sight that we have, or that short visibility that we had, you can get the impression that it's impossible to do good business abroad, but it's not. And half of the Swedish companies will increase their investments in the coming year. That is a good number as well. That shows not only that they're profitable today, but also that they see a good future going forward. They stress cost efficiency, strategic partnerships in the markets, and strong sales skills as the biggest success factors globally. And also we see that, especially in Europe, sustainability increasingly shapes the customer demands for products. And we also see that almost all Swedish companies out there look at the brand Sweden as something positive. A very clear picture is also painted in the report on the hurdles, customs, compliances, naturally tariffs, and other political measures to stop free trade. But at the same time, I think the score of the report is still an optimism. So I just want to end by thanking naturally all of the Business Sweden employees that we have across the globe in all the 45 company offices that we have that have been working very, very hard with doing this report, together with the embassies, together with the Foreign Ministry, and naturally together with the Swedish Chambers International. Thank you very much for the fantastic work, and I think all of you that are in here and all of you following, do download the report and do read it, because it's really interesting reading. So thank you very much, and with that I think I should welcome on stage our Business Sweden's Chief Economist and Head of Research, Lena Sellgren. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan, and thank you to all of you that you are here today. And it's now time to present the results, and we will also have a panel discussion. 4 prominent panelists that will deep dive a little bit and explain for us why we get the results that we have. So a few words on the Business Climate Survey. You have already heard a little bit of this, so it's the 6th time that we do this global survey. But we also do the local services in all these 37 markets. So all these are possible to download from Business Sweden's website or the Chambers as well. So we can move on to the next one. The markets that we cover, the 37, you can see them on this map. So we cover Americas, Europe, and Middle East and surrounding markets, some of them. where we are present as well. And we have the Asian Pacific region. And you can deep dive into this and see afterwards where is my market or region. So this is really good when we now have the 37 markets, more than 2,000 respondents. So thank you for that as well and helping us to reach out to the companies. So that's really good to have this so you can compare, you can have the global outlook, but also regional and into the different markets. But it's also good to keep in mind that the survey were sent out in February and March. And why is that important? We all know it. The 2nd of April, we had Donald Trump's or the US administration's Liberation Day with all these tariffs that are on pause right now, but we don't know where we will end up. So this could, of course, have affected some of the results. So really happy to share the results now, but I will not be the one who presents the results. We have our star at Business Sweden, Manuela Stjärna, who will help us out with this. So give her a warm applause. Welcome up, welcome up. You have done this 4 times now, so you are really into all the results. So looking into the business climate, we have already heard cautious optimism, but tell us a little bit more. What do the companies say abroad?
Thank you, Lena. And I also want to have a welcome and reach out to my colleague Ida Ortega that has done it together with me also all these 2 years.
Wave a little bit, Ida, when here. As important, of course.
As important. So as explained former years, we ask businesses what is their perception of the business climate ranked from 1 to 5 in an index. And here we can see then also the 37 markets that have been part of this year's business climate. Overall, we can see a cautious outlook of the international business climate. Although, as stated, 70% of the Swedish companies report a result over 3, which could be resulted in a moderate optimistic view of the business climate. Saudi Arabia, UAE and India continue to top regarding the business climate perception from the respondents' day-to-day business. But now we also have 2 new markets as 4th and 5th, which is Denmark and Singapore. In contrast, markets such as Germany, South Korea and Turkey receive a little bit of a least optimistic business climate perception. And also it is interesting that when analyzing what type of companies have been responding, it's actually the newcomers that are most optimistic in the different markets.
Good. So cautious optimism, that's quite encouraging, of course. But if we look back to last year and look into profitability and the financial performance for the companies, how does it look like? Were they profitable?
It is very interesting to study profitability and also analyze it with the other business climate perceptions. So what we can see is that actually 66% of Swedish companies abroad were profitable year 2024. 14% resulted in a break-even result and 11% reported a loss. That is quite interesting because then that means that despite business climate being a little bit different depending on the regions, the markets, and even year to year, Swedish companies are still profitable. This is among all the regions, but the MEA Plus region leads with the highest amount of Swedish companies being profitable, specifically in Saudi Arabia and UAE, but very closely followed by Europe and the Americas and APAC. And overall, globally, it is actually Saudi Arabia, Chile, Spain, and Norway that resulted with the highest share of profitable companies, while the Philippines, South Korea, and the United States reported the lowest share, still those ones being quite high.
Probably due to the fact that we heard from previous speakers that Swedish companies are good at adapting. Still, they probably need some help sometimes, but still adapting to new environments. But looking ahead, a year ahead, and to investment plans, does it look good for the companies or a little bit of challenge for them? How do you see this?
it has been very interesting to study the investment now with 37 markets. It gives us a different type of regional analysis. And what we can see globally is that 14% of Swedish companies plan to significantly increase their investment in the coming year. 32% plan to slightly increase it. 38% they don't foresee any change, so they will keep on with the same investment plans. And 12% plan to slightly reduce it or significantly reduce their investment plans. Based on the business climate, Saudi Arabia and India that had very positive business climate, they also are planning then to increase their investment. So those ones are aligned. But it's interesting to see number 3, which is the United Kingdom, which has emerged from 9th place as investment destination in 2024 to top 3 destination in 2025. So that is interesting and also not directly aligned with their business climate perception. In a regional analysis, Americas leads with more than 50% of Swedish companies aiming to increase their investments, specifically in the United States and Chile. And in Europe, the outlook is a little bit mixed. We have some markets like the UK, Netherlands, Spain and Portugal where we really plan to increase our investments. But then we have some other markets like Denmark and France where it appears to be a little bit more cautious regarding investments plans. And then finally, we have Turkey and Italy that reports the highest share of companies planning to decrease their investments. But it's important to state that this one is only 20% of the companies that have responded that.
Good, encouraging as well. And you can deep dive into the report later on to see a little bit on differences between the sizes of companies and industries as well. But why are they successful? We look into success factors as well. What are the most important ones? And here I hope you can compare it a little bit to last year. We don't have the same sample, as you understand, all of you, since we now have 13 more markets. But you have done a little bit of sensitivity analysis, so help us out with this.
Yes, thank you, Lena. So the top 3 success factors are similarly to last year, but a little bit switched in numbers. But it is cost efficiency, partnerships, and sales competence. We try to analyze this both from an industry perspective and a regional perspective. So from an industry perspective, the cost efficiency is very important for industrial sector. While for the consumer sector, brand awareness is of most importance in order to be competitive globally. Regionally, it also differs a little bit. So in the Americas, for example, sales competence is very important. So it's important to have strong sales and to have big presence in the Americas region. In Europe, cost efficiency is among the most important, stating the importance of operational efficiency for Swedish companies in Europe. In APAC, cost efficiency, but then also product development have been stating. Mentioning then that innovation in the APAC region is very important, especially taking into consideration the rapidly evolving markets. And finally, no surprise for the MEA Plus region, cost efficiency, but then also partnerships is very important. So you have to have a strong local presence and you have to have good partnerships in the MEA Plus region.
So interesting. You describe it, the regional differences in a very good way. And I think it goes with that there are the contrasts that we see is due to different market dynamics in the regions. So the brand Sweden is also something that is of importance, which we are happy for. And I truly believe it stands for innovation, sustainability, equality, trust, and all this that we have in our DNA. So which countries are the most, do have the strongest support for brand Sweden?
So the markets where brand Sweden is most important in order to be successful in the market is Turkey, Brazil, and South Korea. But we are also very happy to see that even if we now have 13 new markets, so having a sample much bigger of Swedish companies stating, brand Sweden is still 82%, very important for successful global analysis, both to a great extent, to an extent, and partially. Of course, this depends a little bit on the market. So as we said, these are the top markets where Brand Sweden is very important. But then we have other markets such as the United States, Finland and Norway, where Brand Sweden has a lower relevance in terms of success. So this has helped us analyze that actually the companies or the markets that are geographically and culturally closer to Sweden, that states that Brand Sweden is not as dependent in order to be successful. While the markets that are farther away from Sweden, there we can really use the Brand Sweden in order to be successful.
Good, thank you for that as well. And now we move over a little bit more into the trade barriers that we do see increasing in some markets, and how do the companies see this in their business?
So it is very difficult to navigate these, the global economy and geopolitical uncertainty. But what we can see is that Swedish companies, they believe that custom procedures and regulatory requirements are the most difficult trade barriers in a global perspective. From our regional analysis, we can see that custom procedures is of most difficulty in the MEA Plus region. In the Americas region, regulation could be an obstacle. APAC, the outlook is a little bit mixed, and we have a lot of markets being part of the APAC region. And finally, in Europe, the trade barriers are quite limited, but we have, of course, UK and Ukraine that stand out due to their non-EU status.
Of course they do. That's a different business, I think, as well. But now, if we move on, we have one part in the report focusing on sustainability as well. And then we deep dive into environmental aspects. So to what extent do the Swedish companies see environmental aspects as important for their customers in their sales decision?
So globally, 38% of Swedish companies believe that their customers care to an extent or to a great extent when purchasing a Swedish service or product globally. If we also add up the partially, then we're up to 67%. This is a decrease compared to last year. It can be due to the uncertainty in the global landscape, being it more difficult to focus on sustainability, but it can also be meant due to having many more markets being involved in this year's analysis. What we can still see is that Europe leads the way in terms of sustainability. Swedish companies, specifically in Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands, really emphasize the importance of having environmental factors when purchasing a good or a service in those markets. In the APAC and the Americas region, the markets are a little bit differed. So we have some markets such as Chile, Canada, Australia, and Taiwan that really have strong environmental awareness. And other markets such as the United States, Mexico, and Philippines with a little bit lower environmental awareness. And finally, the MEA Plus region, only half of the Swedish companies stated that their customers care to an extent or to a great extent when purchasing a Swedish service and product regarding sustainability.
Good. So that's not good at all. But anyway, that's where we see the weaknesses a little bit in the report, where we see that it's a lower result than previously, although we have more markets. Environmental aspects are becoming less important if we look into this survey for the company. So not prioritized in this regard to the same extent.
Exactly. Hopefully not a trend.
No, and the focus is still, of course, on sustainability for the companies, but how the ones that are buying the services and products, it's not as important than previously. So that's something that we need to work with. And another thing that is a little bit of a weakness is also that it's increasingly becoming more of a challenge for companies with regulations and customs, and that's what we see as well. But if we summarize this, it's still cautious optimism, profitable companies, and they plan to invest. A majority of the companies out there, and you in the room, hopefully here representing these as well. So I think we can summarize this, that it's a slowdown maybe this year, but hopefully we pave way for investments in the future. Do you agree with that?
I agree.
Yes. Do you agree in the room? Or you hope for it? So thank you, Manuela. Give her a warm applause. Thank you. And you go with this. So thank you so much, Manuela, for sharing the results. And now it's time for the panel discussion, so we can deep dive a little bit more into these results and discuss it as well. So I would like to invite this prominent panel up on stage. So first of all, we have Adrian Aptowitzer, the CEO of Monitor ERP Sweden. And
hello.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And then we have Nora Wabi, Vice President and Customer Unit Head, Northern and Central Europe at Ericsson. Welcome. And Daniel Sidén, Business Development Manager at Ingrid Capacity. Welcome to you as well. And Karin Westman, Director of Sustainability and Country Analysis at EKN, the Export Credit Agency. Welcome to you as well. Very good, and most welcome. We are so happy to have you all here representing different sizes of companies and the Team Sweden and also different sectors. I think this will be a great discussion. So we start off this discussion to go into the business climate first of all. And I would like to invite you first, Adrian here, Monitor, yes, to give your view from your perspective. And you're mostly present today in Europe and Asia.
That's right.
So give us your view on the overall business climate.
Yes, for also I think I agree with the results of the survey. It's optimistic. The business is good. I think we need to divide it. The first quarter of 2025 was definitely the best ever for us in terms of sales, both in Sweden and in other markets. And then it was the 2nd of April, I think. You mentioned.
Yeah, it was the 2nd of April.
That's right, that you mentioned. Then we see a change, and the people that need to take decisions to buy Monitor take their time, wait, want to wait and see. And for you that don't know us, Monitor ERP, we deliver a standard ERP solution for manufacturing companies. So since the April, so we see a little bit, it's not the same power as in the beginning, but still quite good. Surely in Sweden, selling very well, in other countries as well. So generally very good.
Do you see a difference between Europe, Asia? Or maybe hard to look into regions?
Yeah, in markets. I think we are in Asia, it's quite good. In Malaysia and Indonesia and China, quite good. So in general, very good, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We move over to the big global company, Ericsson. Nora, what's your perspective on the business climate?
First, thank you for having me. It's great, and we're more or less aligned with the outcome of the report. I think we're one of the contributors to it as well.
Yes,
I'll start, of course, yeah. and then I start a little bit with an industry view, because I think it complements everything that have been said, other than the economical and the geopolitics. So, from a technological point of view, we are at an inflection point with the 5G wave coming across the globe since the start of 2019. Yeah. And we believe that 5G and connectivity as a whole is a very important contributor to sustainability, but as well to economic growth. It's a foundation that needs to be in place for this economic growth to happen. And positively, we see that finally the Sweden digital policy that has been launched put connectivity as one of the important building blocks of the policy. And I think that's a very good step going forward, something that we've been advocating for years. But if you look from a competitiveness perspective and increase a little bit the zoom out on Europe and the globe, is very unfortunate, the European position, because we're fairly behind in comparison to the bigger giants and the bigger players across the globe who came much more positive on the report, such as India, China, and the US. And the countries who have taken bold decisions in investing early on in the 5G as a technology and in boosting the connectivities are at the forefront of this transformation. While in Europe, we have not taken this. I mean, Sweden is partially ahead of the rest of the Europe, and that's good. But this is not what we're not yet where we want to be when it comes to the full-fledged technological implementation of the 5G. So we would like to see more bold steps in getting the technology in place to enable the transformation and support the sustainability message.
I like that reflection. Thank you so much. And it goes directly to both the Enrico Letta and Mario Draghi report, where we need to, in Europe, invest in infrastructure, physical, digital, AI, energy. We will soon go over to Ingrid capacity, energy competence as well. So that's why we need to mobilize, I think, Team Sweden as well to help out. Because if it's not one market compared to, as you mentioned, the US, China, we cannot compete.
Absolutely. And we're too fragmented. We're small, but when we come together and strong. Yeah. And I mean, Sweden is a place where competence is available, innovation has always happened, and we need to use this as the foundation to push ourselves and the rest of Europe.
Unleash the potential. So we move over to Daniel, to Ingrid capacity, and then we are in efficient energy solutions.
Exactly.
So what's your view broadly on this?
Well, first of all, thank you as well for having me. It's great to be here. I represent Ingrid Capacity. Just maybe a few words on Ingrid Capacity. It stands for Intelligent Grid, and what we do is that we're all about using flexibility in a means to enable a more flexible grid and more intelligent grid. So we deploy physical assets in terms of energy storages, and we run and operate and optimize this according to grid needs to essentially allow for a more rapid energy transition. And I think this report is really interesting because, I mean, on one side, it shows that, you know, there is a slight sort of slowdown in terms of the optimism, but still it remains rather stronger than I was actually anticipating. And I believe that although we're clearly seeing that there's a drawback in terms of, let's say, international relations, and it's slightly becoming more in the nation first. However, I also feel that in Europe, it has also come sort of the European continent together slightly more as well. Yeah. And we operate mainly in the European markets. And I believe from our side, yes, there is a slowdown. And within the renewables or the energy space, there is clearly maybe primarily some of the bigger oil majors that has slowed down their sort of renewables rollout. But we do see that, you know, if you have good bankable projects and the energy transition and the investments required to actually allow for more competitiveness in building more industries relies on affordable energy. So in our aspect, we still see quite strong sort of willingness to invest and sort of expand and deploy these types of assets within our industry at least.
Good, both from a global and EU perspective. And if you haven't seen it, it's really encouraging that we now in Sweden have the strongest support for the EU ever. Statistics Sweden has measured this for 29 years, and it was out last week. That's really good in the time that we are living. So thank you for raising the EU perspective. And Karin, we move over to EKN, and since you have both the sustainability responsibility for the sustainability, but also country analysis, could you just reflect on the global market and the business climate from your perspective.
Yeah, sure. I think a lot have been said. So just for those who don't know us, EKN, we are a part of the Team Sweden family, and we insure companies, exporting companies and their banks against the risks of non-payment. And we have guarantees in around 140 countries every year. So sort of lifting the perspective and then working with the likes of Nora and the large corps, but also small and medium-sized companies. What we can see is very clearly that when times are tough, we get more demands on guarantees. So we see very high volumes in defense industry, in energy, and in telecommunications. And I think that shows that Swedish exports, Swedish companies, and Sweden, we are strong in areas that really matter for the world at the moment. So I think that this is on a positive note. But on the other side, we also see, and I think we've touched upon it already, uncertainty is never good for business. And we see a lot of wanting to invest. You saw that very clearly in the survey. But we can see that both banks, but also companies, is this a good time? Is this the good time, right time for me to move into a new market? Should I stay where I am? And all of that uncertainty, we can very clearly see. Obviously, we are doing what we can do together to lower those barriers, but it's difficult times. But we are strong, and we can do more together also to support all of you in these efforts.
That's completely right, and that's why we see consumption and investment slowing down, not picking up, which means that we have the slowdown globally affecting all of us, of course, globally, but not least Sweden and Swedish companies, because we are more dependent on demand from abroad than many other countries. So this is something that we would like to change if possible, and we will probably see that central banks will lower interest rates a little bit after weaker demand if we not get inflation into the picture, and that's too early to paint that picture. Yes, so now would you like to comment on that as well?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think another aspect is the cost efficiency,
Yes,
which was like a mainly
the top
in the competitiveness of the EU companies, I think, or Swedish companies abroad.
Yes.
So yeah, and I think it maybe has to do with the risk as well. So in that case, I think for us in Monitor it's quite good, because especially in manufacturing companies or industry inside the industry, a way to reduce the cost is to change a ERP system. And one question for you.
Good branding for that, because I agree that's a good point.
So any Swedish companies out there, welcome to contact us. Yeah, but I have a question for you. Just the uncertainty in the world, isn't it benefit your business?
Well, our sole purpose for existing is to support companies. So obviously, when it's almost like we are able to do more, and our government, Swedish government, has recently increased the opportunity for us and the guarantee framework we have to 550 billion Swedish crowns, which I think gives us opportunity to support you. But that's not our purpose of being. It's just for you guys to be able to do as much business as possible. So uncertainty is not good for anybody. But when there is uncertainty, the likes of us come in to be able to reduce that. Yeah.
Because the companies need you.
Yes, and banks as well, to be able to provide financing for companies. Yes.
Very good. Daniel?
Yeah, I just wanted to add up on, because I mean, like when there are these sort of uncertain times and, some are sort of very, let's say, it feels like intuition based, at least maybe from the other side of Atlantic Ocean in some aspects. But I mean, when there's more sort of turbulence in a sense, I think that just puts more focus on the fundamentals of each market, because when there's good times, there is like low interest rates, and there's peace around the globe. Well, I mean that's but you get my point. Then it's easier to sort of be a little bit more opportunistic, go and enter a market, try it out, reap some sort of more shorter term benefits. But now it just puts more even emphasis on the cost efficiency. And that's very good to see those results in this sort of output, because that gives us, the general view of a lot of Swedish companies that are acting abroad. So I think we can still be very successful and sort of creative in how we do it, but it just puts a little bit more effort on being sure about the fundamentals. The energy transition is happening, you know, 5G is happening, and you know, AI is happening. So just to make sure that you center your focus around that, I think that just is becoming slightly important in this aspect.
Nora, something to add to
I
this?
think all has been said. I think the beauty of the partnership we have with EKN is mainly, to make it very simple, is risk management. So business flow should not be interrupted because of external risk. This external risk is exported to EKN and they take care of it, and the business flow between us as a technology supplier and the consumers in the market, who are basically the operators or the ones in need of this technology, is continuing. So I think that's a simpler way of putting it on the table, and we really appreciate that. Yeah.
But it's also good to hear that we can support and we can do it in an efficient way, also with a presence in the local market. I mean, Ericsson, for example, you are everywhere and you are expanding Ingrid capacity and Monitor as well.
Yeah.
But still having people on the ground, Business Sweden, the embassies, consulate, and the chambers of commerce as well. That's a strength that we do have. And also when it's business to government, or sometimes, Nora, we were talking about also the government to government and how to do this business, then we can support in a way that's hard to do for you as a company alone. So that's what we want to do more of course. But if we should talk a little bit about the success factors and trade barriers as well. Should we start with the success factors? Because we are into this a little bit. There are business opportunities. We are strong in many areas: energy, transport, industrial materials, innovation and sustainability. Because even if it's lower results in our survey, still you cannot take sustainability and energy and combat the climate away. So that's where we will end up. So if we continue to invest in this from a Swedish perspective, I think we will, towards the end of the day, be the ones that gain on this. Success factors. Who would like to start? Are you ready here, Adrian?
Always.
And you are, yeah, I know that you are already. That's good to have
always,
yeah. As well. I know that you are always ready. So, but you are a family-owned company.
Yeah, that's right.
And is that the difference? Could you bring this into the, because it differs from the other?
Yeah, I got this question in another panel in Hudiksvall. We're coming from Hudiksvall. It's a small town about 300 kilometers north to Stockholm. And it's a family-owned company. And I got this question in another panel. What challenges do you have as a CEO in a family-owned company? So I think I see only advantages. I can work long-term. We're talking about generation, not a quarter report, for instance. So there is no pressure to show like result in short term. So I can really like together with everybody build a sustained organization, and then I don't need to show results on quarterly way. So I think this is a very strong point, the long term view. And the other one is usually you have like quite strong culture and core values in such family companies as IKEA, for instance. You know, like the power of the culture. So I think it's something very good to build on. And even I think that employees are enjoying working in a family. I don't know, family atmosphere. You come because it's still a family, and it's, even though we are about 330 employees in Sweden, I still believe and I know that everybody feels like at home when I come to work. And it's a part of a big family. So that's very good. So this is some from my point of view.
But if you look into, that's excellent to hear, but the three main factors here that we saw in the presentation by Manuela is actually cost efficiency, partnership, sales competence. If you look into these ones, how, from your perspective?
From my perspective, of course.
How do you rank these ones?
Cost efficiency is very important because we can sell more to the companies that want to reduce the costs. And then sales competence is very important. Of course, you need people to sell the product. Maybe number one everywhere. But one factor that I don't find there that it's very, I think for me it's very important when you it's the culture point of view. When you start a new, we are planning to start go into 3 new markets now. It's a scoop now, so you know, for all the media now.
Well, we are ready to support, as you know.
Yeah,
well, we support you.
We keep it in secret now, so please don't tell anybody. No, but we're planning to go this very soon into UK and to the US and even to India. And I think it was in, it's according to the report, like I think it was number 3.
Yes.
And in the UK, we went from 9 to 5. To 3, even better. So I don't know. It seems like it's so. And when we go into those a new market, of course, all the classes see the competitors, see the market, manufacturing companies for us, and the other ERP systems. But I think the cultural is a very interesting. You need to respect the culture of the new country. UK and Sweden. Quite near to each other, cultural. Even the USA, a little bit less. India, totally different. So we need to respect that. So I think for us, a key factor is finding the way to go in with our family culture, the strong one, and build an organization, find people that are enjoying in this environment.
Really good. Thank you for that. And we have all the colleagues out there from Chambers and Business Sweden embassies. Most of them are in the room, so talk to them later on.
All right.
Nora, I think you will focus a bit now on digitalization as an enabler and as a success factor for global transition. So help us out a little bit.
I think I keep the European lens here, and always starting from Sweden, but going a little broader. There are factors for success. There are enablers for success, and I made the analogy with other markets already when we spoke about US, India, and China, and what they've done to enable 5G implementation and rollout at the right speed with the right focus. And if I look at Europe, there are a number of things that we need to start with. I'm pleased to see that we have a commissioner now that is much more focused on competitiveness, and we see an opportunity in the European markets for in-market consolidation. We have been for so long very focused on price protection for consumers, which is good at a certain stage. But today, it's becoming the business, the connectivity business and the mobility business is becoming super fragmented to the extent that is hampering the operators from investing the right technology in their networks to meet the demands for the digitization of the future. So I think there are serious talks about more in-market consolidation, how to remove the barriers for this consolidation and making the European markets much more competitive for investment. Along with that comes a lot of support that is required, for example, on the regulatory level, the licensing, the spectrum prices, for example. That's very important that we talk about, and making the spectrum available a priority more than how much money we as a regulator price that spectrum. Because for so long we've been prioritizing the return from selling the spectrum in those beauty contexts versus the commitment on rollout. So you make the operator's life more difficult. They pay a lot of money to acquire the spectrum, and there is no money. I'm making it a bit simple, and no money left for investing. Right? So we need to actually reduce the price of the spectrum and do that against commitment for the operators to roll out further. Then a third aspect other than the consolidation and the spectrum pricing and the regulation is the funds. We have so much money in the European fund system that are tied to certain technologies, and we're fighting really hard now to make those funds technology agnostic, whereby you make it available for rollout any technology that is deemed necessary for the connectivity, for example. There are countries who have done a very good job in that. We do a lot with North Star in Sweden together with Telia, but we also have seen cases where funds have enabled rural 5G connectivity in Spain, where resilience and recovery funds have been put directly to fund the rollout of 5G. I think these are practices that we need to bring to the surface and replicate across more markets to catch the wave of 5G rollout, which is an important enabler for the digitization to happen.
Really good that you bring this up, because I also think this from the European perspective, that it's also interesting to see how should we finance everything that is needed to invest in. And we need to think in new ways, I truly believe. Energy transition, Daniel, that's also one of the key enabler or the factors for the future. So where do you see the success factors, or
well,
does it differ?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to speak for the whole energy transition as such. I will not try to do so, but I mean, taking our
we
perspective.
We expect you.
No, we don't. I'm trying to. No, but I think what you said, Nora, was for sure about sort of market consolidation. If we speak about the European context, there is, I mean, this is maybe part of the barrier as opposed to the success factor in the current state, I would say. But clearly finding ways where. I mean, I think we are progressing in the right direction. There are some really interesting incentives being rolled out now of harmonizing essentially the regulations. But it's also important that each country also...
Within the EU.
Yeah, exactly. It's also important that these countries do also sort of implement this in a way that makes it not too complicated. But in terms of success factor for us, I think it's super clear that it's partnerships. I mean, without a doubt, a partnership is top number one for us. I think it comes with us not necessarily, exporting goods in a sense, but rather establishing ourselves there and building infrastructure. And then it's really key to have also the cultural aspect, as you addressed as well, because even though we are sort of Europeans, all of us, it is a lot of difference of doing business in Poland as opposed to Spain.
Wow.
I mean, that's, I think everyone knows that. So for us, it's crucial to find good partnerships and that share some of the key common values, but do also have complementary competencies from the local perspective, where we can come more with sort of the domain expertise and sort of really combine that to also having sort of a quicker understanding of the market conditions, and because as we operate in a heavily regulated industry, the energy industry, it is, really, really essential to understand the different variances on, can you do like this, or do you have to apply it this way? And although we have also a harmonized electricity grid system to some extent, at least in Europe, there are still a lot of different variations, and you need to really understand how those differs. And I think having a partner then is really essential.
And thank you. That's a good segue to you, Karin, because now we are moving a little bit into small, medium-sized companies as well, because it's a lot that you need to understand and adapt to. So I know that you focus on help all companies, big ones and small, medium-sized ones. But if you focus now a bit on small, medium-sized companies, how do you support them in their internationalization journey?
Thank you, Lena. So that's actually one of the most common misunderstandings I come across about EKN is that we only support large companies. That is just not true. So we, small and medium-sized companies, just to start off, account for about 40% of Swedish exports. And obviously that means that they are key to enabling growth and job creation across Sweden. So it's very important. It's easy to maybe sometimes lose track of that. And we visit about 1,000 small and medium-sized enterprises every year. Last week, I think we had visited 417, so we still have some work to do this year. But a couple of things that we see as sort of stumbling blocks, maybe related to maybe the financial opportunities. So you have your sales competence, you are doing your partnerships, and you are cost effective, but you still come across issues. So one of those is cash flow problems. So you receive your large order, but then your customer, they want to pay you in 120 days time. That's for us, for anybody that's tricky, but for a small company, that could be crucial. That's one thing. Another one is understanding and managing international risk. That sort of goes without saying, that's what we talked about. But what are your credit risks when you move into a new market or in this market, or your legal risks, or political risks? What do they look like? And then the third one is that it's still challenging to have financial tools from banks that are adjusted to your needs as a small and medium-sized company. So what we do is we try to address all three of these by the guarantees that we can offer to banks, reducing the risks to ensure that a small and medium-sized company can have working capital. But also, again, we're active in 140 countries. We have a full team of country specialists. So we know quite a lot about some of these challenges or opportunities in countries. So again, I think together with our colleagues in Team Sweden and the Chamber of Commerces and the embassies, we are here to help to be able to navigate those things. And I really do think that large and small and medium-sized Swedish companies really do possess these three key aspects that we need. But together, we need to also then sort of lower the thresholds, in particular on being able to access financing to make that step.
Thank you, Karin.
If I just may comment on this, I think it's a practical experience. We spoke about managing risks. We spoke about knowing the local markets. The relationship with EKN is super useful also in due diligence when we're assessing entering a new market, and we want to know the credibility and the compliance rating of the partner we're seeking in that market. So I think you guys help us with the pre-work, and you're already there. You know the banks. You know the risk of the environment, so it makes it much easier for us when we come into a new market. If EKN signs on it, then we can go following your steps in a very confident way.
Can I just add?
Yes,
thank you. That's very nice to hear. That's all. But also, I think that sometimes, I mean, yes, there are uncertainties and things are unstable. But I think if we look to just sort of across the globe, what we see in countries is that yes, many of them took a heavy hit during Corona and COVID-19, but overall, most countries are slowly picking up that. So we actually overall see more upgrades in creditworthiness for countries than we see downgrades. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, because sometimes we lose track of this sort of the here and now versus, as you're saying, the long-term trends. And the long-term trends are still positive.
That's good to
Nice to
hear.
hear.
Yeah, and adding to this is also, it feels a little bit that we are looking for the challenges that we see out there and risk minimize. And that's what we need to look into. But we need to remind ourselves from a Swedish perspective that more than 80% of our export ends up in either the single market or in markets where the EU has free trade agreements. It doesn't mean that other markets are not important, but still it's an advantage, of course. And there are a lot of free trade agreement discussions going on, not least in Southeast Asia and Australia. And I think it's not free trade agreements do not drive your business, but it's of help if you have a common ground. Do you agree?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Let's make
Yes,
a
yes.
free trade with USA as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's the problem?
And China. What's the problem? And China, I know we have you represented in the room, so please help us to support this. No, but it's more complicated. We have, of course, global value chains, import, and we are present in the markets as well. And regarding the US, it's interesting also to remind ourselves that 9% of the export from Sweden ends up in the US. But if we look into global sales, as you have in your reports, it's 17%. So Swedish companies are present on the US market for different reasons. And you have to look like more or less an American company, which means that that could be one thing when we see some of the results for the US, that you are more like an American company. So thank you for sharing these views. And now we move over to the important topic, sustainability. And we focus a bit on the environmental aspects, I think, because that's where we saw these a little bit of weaker results. So I look at you first, Nora.
Yeah.
Would you like to start off a little bit? And I think you will also direct this a bit into the digitalization, the twin transition, and whatever we call it.
Absolutely. So I think that the digitization, by definition, is the objective of it is operational efficiency and bringing in much more focus on efficiency, productivity, which has a direct impact already on energy consumptions. So that is, we have witnessed that, for example, during COVID, when we have gone online with so much team calls versus a lot of less traveling. I think that has helped a lot in reducing the footprint of the globe as such. And we showed by means of a practical example that technology can substitute in 80% of the cases the need for physical presence for traveling. Of course, I'm not saying that physical is not important, but what I'm saying is with further digitization of the industries, we will see much more reduction in the energy consumptions. It is said to be that by 2030, if digitization happened as planned in several industries, we can reduce 170 million ton of carbon dioxide emissions, which I think is superb in terms of numbers and figures of how much digitization helps this. So Ericsson has been extremely focused on energy consumption since the beginning. Our portfolio, big part of our R&D budget has been dedicated to make our portfolio more reduced in energy consumptions. We have a commitment that we made in 2020 that by 2030 we reduce energy consumption in our own supply chain by 50%. And we have a commitment of it's good, but the bigger commitment is by 2040 to become net zero in the full value chain, which I think something that we're super committed to. And we continue to drive R&D in that direction. Also, our customers, one of their bigger decisions in selecting the supplier is on energy consumptions. And we have an extremely competitive portfolio where we cut our energy consumption on a regular basis in the new releases. So I think that these are the perspective of how we commit to sustainability. And we continue. There is nothing else. I want to just.
That's where you are heading, and you stay. Yeah. That's good. And now, Daniel, energy, security, resilience. That's your business.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's your view?
I mean, I think this is. It is clear to me that the sustainability as a sort of a term, and even ESG in the financial sector. I mean, it's been on sort of a downturn to some extent. But what I think is interesting is in this case is that maybe it's not green necessarily that is driving the energy transition, but it's resilience. It is competitiveness, because I mean that's what's driving it. And in my view, at the current state, I mean, it happens to be so that those energy sources that are decentralized, that can be resilient, and that sort of are very cost efficient are typically the ones that are fossil free as well, at least when you build new energies. So from our view, this is just sort of, there's just a different sentiment that is driving the same sort of trajectory. I mean, we still However, what we see is very important is that we also do focus on execution. I mean, the innovation in the energy space is, clearly needed, but we do have already most of the technologies needed. So it's rather about enabling, both from a regulation point of view, but also from sort of executing and allowing for a lot more capital to flow into this market to be able to build it out rapidly. So, but what we see is the main bottleneck in this is relating to the grid. I mean, according to EU's recently updated sort of action plan on how much investments are needed in the grid until 2040, it's about 1.2 trillion euros until that point in view. Globally, EIA or like the International Energy Agency are anticipating that we need to enable to reach the 2050 national targets. We need to basically put in investments equivalent to the full grid system we have already today. So like 80 million kilometers of electricity grid. So there's massive sort of need here. And I think
opportunities.
And opportunities, exactly. And this is, we need to solve this because that's how we allow new industries to connect. That's how we allow also more fossil-free energies to connect as well, being sort of part of the enabling factor, creating competitiveness and creating resilience. So I think it's really crucial for us to, start doing it and acting upon it because there's a lot of opportunities. There are technologies in place, but we need to also think smart and collaborative, focus on EU and Europe, how we can sort of jointly also think about how we build the energy system for the future. And that's where we really spend most of our time and our passion about how we can be an enabler in that sort of aspect, I think, of capacity.
And then the global perspective. Thank you for that. And now, Adrian, how do you bring sustainability into your strategic decision making?
Yes, well, it's mostly because we are like delivering a software, not producing a lot of products and so on. So we developed a module in our ERP called Sustainability by Monitor, which we launched 2 years ago. And because we have about 6,000 manufacturing companies around the world, about 4,000 in Sweden, a lot of small, medium-sized companies in Småland, in Sweden, and so on. And they are struggling now, with the regulations that they need to report all the sustainability figures, and they need to compete, and especially sub-suppliers to automotive.
Yes.
They're putting a lot of pressure on them. So using our system, our software, they can make this reporting much easier and be more competitive. Because what we're selling to, we're giving a tool to our customer to be more competitive. So I liked what you said about competitiveness, which is very important. So this is how the way we can help a better and more sustained world, because a customer to us that use it well can plan the supply chain to be more sustained, so that it will be less CO2 and footprint, and then win more businesses, but in the same time be more green.
A quick reply, and then I move to Karin, and then we will soon.
I just wanted to emphasize, because I think, knowing, especially like when you're a manufacturing company, there's so many different components across the globe, and really being able to sort of track and monitor, and in some sort of form and shape, that's really where you're sort of enabling that, because if you can have more visibility and understand each and every component, I think that's, clearly, a key driver for more demand on both ends. So I think that's crucial for manufacturing industry, essentially.
Perfect, thank you. Karin, do you look into sustainability in a very broad perspective? And how do you integrate it in supporting the Swedish companies abroad?
Yeah, so I think from our perspective is making sure that we support you in the right deal. So it's understanding risk and how to manage them. And most of the time, it's perfectly possible to manage them. But I want to just sort of complement what I hear the three of you saying, and I'm glad you picked up the word resilience, because I think a lot of the work that Swedish companies are now doing in terms of ensuring not just their product, but the entire value chains, and being able to offer this to your customer is a very good business proposition. And we can also see in procurements when the procurement is not purely on low cost, but maybe cost efficient, on life cycle costs, on all of the other things that you want to sort of add to your proposition. Swedish companies and European companies are really at the forefront. So I think, again, that's where I know within Team Sweden, we're also working on influencing the way that you do your procurement, or states or large companies and so on. I think that actually it's about the whole value chain and long-term value, and not about the specific small impact. And we can see that across the companies that we work with, and that is actually good for business. And it's just part of what we sell as Sweden, if you will.
Good. So now the last question. I will start with you here, Adrian.
Yes.
But the same question to all of you. So relatively short answers.
The 1 million question.
It's the 1 million question.
Okay.
So what is your number one recommendation for a company looking to expand abroad? The number one.
The number one, I will choose have respect and work with the culture. Culture when choosing the market, the culture when you pick your key people in the new, if it's a partner or if it's subsidiaries, and make sure that you're like putting effort and energy in implementing your culture in the new market.
Culture partnership. Thank you for that. Nora?
On the same line, I would say responsible business. Responsible for our company, responsible for the brand Sweden, and responsible for the place where we're going to operate. Whatever we're delivering or selling, it needs to be a responsible business.
That's great. Thank you. Responsibility here.
Well, with the risk of repeating myself, but for me, it's clearly partnerships. I think it's, you know, finding good partners. Doesn't matter what type of sort of product or sort of industry you operate in. It's a great way to not only learn sort of the country and the dynamics and the culture of it itself, but it's also a way to de-risk, share costs, which is becoming increasingly important. And then some partnerships will fail for sure, but especially you get a way to more quickly learn.
You can exactly. You can learn from it.
So partnerships is where I
excellent. I understand why your business is going in the right direction. So,
and that's actually a perfect segue into my point, and that is that you are not alone. So look for support from your Business Sweden colleagues, the embassies, the Chamber of Commerces, be they the Swedish to whatever country you're interested in, or the local branches. We are there to help you. That's our job at Team Sweden. So, and also to other companies that to support each other. So, don't do it alone.
Thank you for these last words, and thank you to Karin, Daniel, Nora, and Adrian for excellent insights that you shared with us today. And thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Give them a warm applause. So, thank you. And now, the final remark for this day or session will be delivered by Jonas Lindström, representing Swedish Chambers International today. And our partnership that we have with SCI is actually the two of us with our teams, of course. And you are also CEO at the Swedish Chamber of Commerce in Brazil. So I would like to hand over to you to try to summarize and give some recommendations to us as well. So please, Jonas, and thank you for the good collaboration.
Thank you, Lena. So, navigating turbulent skies. I think we all have to live with it, right? For us, living abroad, working abroad, promoting Swedish businesses, Swedish trade. Of course, it's worrying hearing world leaders talking about how to decrease, how to control international trade by tariffs and other obstacles. I think we hear more about building walls than bridges today, which is totally the opposite of Swedish values and Swedish beliefs. I think what we hear today is very much similar to what was taught in Brazil some 40 to 50 years ago, where local industry was to be protected at any cost. And the consequence has been that today Brazil has a hard time to compete on the international market in terms of efficiency, quality, even costs. So from history we learn that we do not learn anything from history.
Exactly.
Some things, however, are growing rapidly. The Business Climate Service is one example. We compare from last year, 24 to 37 countries participating. And if we go back only 6 to 7 years, very few countries used to work with kind of service, and not many companies were participating. This year, more than 2,000 busy businessmen, businesswomen, took of their valuable time to fill in the survey. And for me, as the coordinator from SCI's side, it's been a privilege to talk to some chambers around the world that I knew very little about beforehand. And you all would be surprised if you knew how much work is being done out there, promoting Sweden, Swedish culture, Swedish business, Swedish trade. And in times like this, I think partnerships, cooperation, joining forces is more important than ever. And we really appreciate the efforts from the government, together with partners as Business Sweden, the Swedish Institute, in order to boost Team Sweden even more here in Sweden, but also abroad. And from SCI's side, I can say that we are more prepared than ever. So please count on us, always. So I think it's time to thanks everyone who's been here, right? Lena, Manuela, and Ida for your excellent work. Working with Business Sweden has been fantastic as always. Teams with intelligent and qualified people all over. Stockholm Chamber of Commerce, of course, Daniela Waldvogel, who's been hosting this great launch event. And thank you, the Stockholm Chamber, for the support to the chambers around the world. Great teamwork. We're here 2 days now to boost the Swedish Chambers International. Look forward to these 2 days here in Stockholm. And finally, thanking all of you who came to the Stockholm Chamber, all of you who have been watching, and we wish you a good week, a sunny and warm summer, and we look forward to seeing you here again in June next year. Thank you.
And keep collaborating. Thank you to all of you. Tack.